And we are back here on Fox 59 Tonight, here with CBS 4's and Fox 59's finest. Max Lewis and Jenny Dreasler. We've got some Emmys coming up here. Nominated,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Nominated and nominated.
That's
All
right.
three of us are nominated.
I wish everybody
We'll
good luck.
see. Yeah, hopefully someone can.
Hopefully, at least one of us
Yeah.
Or-
snags one.
Or
Or
we all three.
Or we all
sweep.
three do.
Yes, that would be very nice.
I think we're on the same one. You're
Yeah.
on your own.
Yes, which was for breaking news.
Okay.
Mine was for the tornado cover.
Okay.
tornadoes. I'm all
Uh,
Delphi.
You're
Yeah,
all
I'm on
Delphi.
one Delphi with you, and then I'm on a historical cultural nomination.
Okay.
I
Well,
like that.
but I tell you what, I'm not on. I'm not a Murrow award-winning journalist like
Oh,
the two of you.
Ooh.
Congratulations on that. as well.
Thank you. Thank
That's-
you.
As Joe Biden would say, that's a big deal.
That's a
It
big
is a big
deal.
deal.
Thank you for catching the reference. All right, so we've been talking about the scandal in the mayor's office,
Yep.
and this is something that I probably won't go away until one, that full report comes out, and two, Lauren Roberts gets to say her entire piece to the council, which could happen sometime this week.
Yep.
Between all of it, and so we talked about texts that came out, because now it's in these different chapters of things. Now it's a conversation about, well, what if the mayor's office is cleared on what they were supposed to legally do? Okay, now there's folks, including Lauren Roberts, saying, wait a minute, there's more. And there are things that the mayor did do. Like, he sent me these uncomfortable texts in 2015. One would say, okay, that's 2015. He wasn't the mayor. But now there's this other set of texts, Max, that you covered from Carolyn Ellert
Yes.
that are from 2020. So that's a different ballgame. He is mayor.
Correct.
They are city employees. It's more recent.
Yes.
Take me into this one.
And a little bit late night.
Okay.
Also, I believe Caroline or someone told the Star that they were sent at, I think, like 10 or
10:15.
past 10:15. Okay.
10:15.
Yeah. So late night text to a employee, some would argue, is not necessarily uncommon when you're running a political campaign or whatever.
She's
but
26 at the time. He's 63.
Mhm.
Just
right. So a
putting
little
that
bit
out
of an
there.
age gap,
Mhm.
but it's probably more so late night text, maybe planning something, talk about something the next day wouldn't be uncommon, but text messages like this might raise some eyebrows,
Yeah.
let's say. So do you want me to read them off?
Yes,
there?
please. And
Okay.
I've got the Indy Star article as well.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So here's the one. This is one I talked about that he sent to her again, 10:15 at night. And apparently it was accompanied by a picture, because he says, quote, "Can I tell you that the picture of you and me in front of the seal, I don't know which seal, which I know you did not want to take, nor did you like taking, is my absolute favorite. It appears so real, as uncomfortable as it may have made you." So that's one of the texts that I assume was accompanied by a picture that he was talking about that they took together that
Mhm.
apparently she was uncomfortable with, and he wasn't, and he likes it. He then said, "It's almost as if we were both proud that the picture memorializes us in that particular moment, however long ago, and that we are happy and proud of each other. I know you weren't, but you faked it well." And Caroline did not respond to either of those text messages. So I think that I have to say, I think those text messages are some that maybe raised more eyebrows than,
Yeah.
I mean, Lauren Roberts' text messages, yes, were, weird also. But as you had pointed out, he wasn't in his, official capacity and all this kind of stuff. This is a very different story. And, again, I think some people say speaks to the culture that existed in the mayor's office. And really not even because there's a mix of the mayor's office and the campaign and all this kind of stuff. Maybe just, I should say, the atmosphere that existed in the Mayor Hogsett's orbit, whether
Yes.
that be campaign or whatever, regardless.
Yes.
I don't think it really matters, to be honest. I think it just matters, was Hogsett, this is the
Right.
first time that this has sort of like come directly on him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously he was responsible for the keeping Thomas Cook on, bringing him back, all this kind of stuff that is involved in that.
Right. This is the first time we're really shining a light on something
Right,
he
that he did
may or may not
himself
have done.
and may
Yeah,
have made people feel
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable.
Right.
And some say, Lauren and Caroline hasn't really spoken out about this, but they, I believe, think that this could be considered sexual
Right.
harassment.
Well, and there were Cam, do you have the poetry?
I do have the
Oh,
poetry.
the poetry
Read about the
text.
poetry, because this is another text exchange.
Yes.
So this is from the Indianapolis Star. Again, is where we're showing this from. So 2 days earlier, from where Max was just reading, Indianapolis Star says Hogsett asked her extensively via text about her preferred poetry in an after-hours exchange that appeared to span a few hours. After initially texting Ellard about work-related logistics, he followed up about poetry, saying, "So, last question. Which poem do you find more meaningful and or compelling? The Wasteland or The Love Song by Alfred J. Prufrock?" The topic was familiar yet unnerving to Ellert. Cook also had showered her with poetry. Cook, again, this is her connecting it, saying, not only did the mayor share poetry with me, but Thomas Cook, who we're accusing of bad things, also shared poetry with me, including one time placing a poetry book on her desk, even after she asked him to maintain appropriate boundaries at work. Hogsett proceeded to ask for her favorite poetry, saying he would read it that night. The mayor then sent repeated messages asking in various ways for Elliot's advice on an unspecified issue. In one, he said, "I care what you think." The entire thing is completely, he says, frack up, FRACKUP. "Advise me on how to deliver," he said in another text. The next thing, "I am asking." The next, "I need your advice. Thanks." At that point, Eller asks what he's talking about. Hogsett responded, like, "What am I going through now?" "It's only 9 a.m., he wrote, correcting the time to 9 p.m. in a follow up text. "So tell me what I should do." She again asked what he needs advice on. Hogsett replied, "About all things." In several follow up messages, the mayor implored Ellert to respond, saying, "Talk to me, please. Hello, it's only 9:36 p.m." The final report by Fisher Phillips makes no mention of these messages or the concerns that the young woman had shared with these communications with investigators, even though it contains a section on workplace culture in the administration and notes Cook and others acted unprofessionally around women and other employees. Ellert and Roberts' lawyers said the report fails to account for all of the evidence that my clients provided and misses the full scope of the important, relevant issues.
Yeah.
I will preface this with saying I have no knowledge of what state of mind the mayor was in when he said
Right.
this. However, at 9:30 at night, and when you read those text messages, they are not making sense. There's they're sort of all over the place. There's misspellings. The frack,
Frack up. I don't even know what that means.
I don't know what that means. Like, you have to wonder, like, was there, I don't know, had he had some drinks or whatever? Like, I
It
don't know,
doesn't, when you receive a text messages like that, it raises, and rightfully so, like, this doesn't make sense. Like, these aren't making sense.
Right.
Any normal person would read this and be like, okay, I'm not connecting these dots. And then there's this desperation at the end. Why are you not talking to me? And not talking about this particular situation at all, but as a female, I have gotten text messages
Right.
like this from men. Again, I'm not directly relating to this to Mayor Joe Hogsett, but as a female, when you get messages like that imploring you, talk to me, you need to talk to me now. And when you're not complying with what a man wants you to do, it's it's unnerving. And it's like, if you aren't and going back to the picture thing, how he had said to her, again, not saying that this is how she might have felt. I'm not trying to, put myself in that position. But again, he's saying, I like this picture, even though you didn't. And you vocalized that it made you uncomfortable. But I don't care. I still liked it. And again, not talking about that per se, but just situations like that where a man can say to a woman, I don't care what you think or what you feel. I don't care about your time constraints. You need to answer me now, talk to me now. I don't care what you feel. I think that's I've had that happen to me before.
Right.
And again, I haven't talked to Caroline about this, but when you're in those situations, it is unnerving. It can be unnerving. So I can understand from a female standpoint why something like that would be unnerving.
A lot of people probably been in that
I think
situation.
a lot of people
Something,
have, or they don't talk about it, or
yeah.
again, not saying, anything about Mary Jo Hogsett or Caroline, but just the situation in general when you get stuff
But
like that. It's hard.
the point in the Star article that you read at the end is sort of the point that
Mm-hmm.
all these people are getting at, is that, yeah, there was a section of the report about workplace culture. And
Hmm.
then you have, you know, Hogsett texting things like that, and like,
Why was this not brought
what
up?
is
Why
that
was this not
workplace
in there?
culture? Right.
What
And
what did you investigate? And that's what they were asking. If this is clearly workplace culture, why was this not included in this 55-page report?
right. And the fact that the concern has always been from the beginning is that here you have Krista Carlino is the chairwoman of the investigative committee, and is close with Mayor Joe Hogsett. I mean, they're majority. It's made up of majority Democrats, and so the concern has always been, well, you just have the Democrats investigating the Democrats, and so how tough and are they really going to be? And how? I mean, obviously the law firm did the actual
Right.
investigation, but they picked the law firm, and I I would be a little shocked if someone did not have prior knowledge
Hmm.
or hadn't seen that report, until that day. Maybe they did. I have no evidence to suggest otherwise, but that's generally not how that works. You don't just, show up at the meeting. It's like, oh, here's this report. Like, I've never seen it before. Like,
Hmm.
no, it's included in like any person who's on a council, knows, like, you get a work packet. Basically, you
Right.
get a packet of all the stuff that's going to be talked about, normally like days, maybe even a week in advance. You look through it. So,
They
I don't
knew
know.
they told me that they hadn't seen it until that meeting, but I had a couple of people tell me off record we had just gotten it before and
Right.
it's lengthy.
And
So,
maybe those people didn't,
right.
but
I
there
think
is
there
no
were other
leadership.
there's no right,
There's
there was no
none of the
leadership.
Democratic leadership
Right.
is on that committee.
Right.
Did the Democrat, I don't know. I
I think
find
there's
that very
so
hard to
I do
believe.
too. I think there's so much more to this, that there's just so many more questions that I think need to be answered and should be answered, especially if they're paying $300,000 worth of taxpayer
Yeah.
money to figure out what really happened. When did
Right.
people know about it?
Is this, there's been, it is unclear if Joe Hogsett is running for a fourth term. I say he is because, um,
Even though he says he hasn't, and said
well,
that before also, but
well,
yeah.
I say the reason I say that is because I reached out to the mayor's office to ask, after he was doing those big fundraisers earlier this year, I
Hmm.
said, "Hey, what's going on? Certainly looks like the mayor's running for a fourth term. Is he running for a fourth term?" And his office responded and said, "That's a question for his campaign to answer." So then there's a campaign.
Right.
Right.
Why
Who,
is there a campaign
Why
if
is
you're
there a
not running?
campaign if you're not running?
yeah. So I tried to reach out to all the contacts we could find related to his previous campaign. We never
Yeah.
were able to hear back from anybody, but so it's up for debate if he's going to run for
Right.
a fourth term. This certainly doesn't help.
I can't imagine it would. I
Yeah.
mean, but the other thing is that he was just recently elected, and people have very, very short memories.
Yes.
Right.
So by the time that comes up and that's an issue again, who knows? I mean, there could be a whole nother
There could be a whole
scandal that
nother thing.
upended.
This could be in the
This could
rearview
be
mirror
long
by the time
gone.
we get
Mm-hmm.
get to there.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, but I do think, I mean, his reputation has taken a hit. There's no doubt
Oh,
about
for
that.
sure.
And even among Democrats and Democratic members of the city council, and I'm sure Democratic leaders, the Marion County Democratic Party has to be thinking, is this,
Is
is
this
this
what
our guy?
do we want to stay with it? I mean, I've had them tell me, like, okay, when this report came out, if you were the mayor of the city and you are even remotely linked to something like this, you should be in the room when this report is released. And they said, this isn't the kind of mayor that we want. People told me, the special investigative committee told me, the way that this has been handled, they're deeply disappointed in how he's been handling this, and he should have been front and center. And I think that, Max, you're right. There are people, they've told me they're reconsidering, is this, like you said, is this our guy? Is this who we really want to stick with? And I think that that's going to be what we see here over the next, months and years to come, is what's going to happen with
Well,
that.
there are other people who are interested in running for mayor.
Yes.
Some terribly kept secrets over the years, and some still haven't said anything. But somebody who also got dragged into this, who we already mentioned, who not good for him,
Yes.
Vop Osley.
Yes.
For the longest, the thought has
Worst
been
kept secret in Indianapolis.
yes, that the council president Vop Osley is going to run for mayor at some point. And now he's been dragged into this. So where he would have had no association, now he's got some egg on his face.
Yeah, which I think is the reason you saw him walk back.
I think that's why he came back and put out that statement saying, "Oh, just kidding. I shouldn't have done that. I was wrong." I think there's a reason he did that. If he had nothing to lose, he wouldn't have done that. I think he has a.
He realizes it looks very, very bad,
Right.
and like, for all of Hogsett's, issues that we brought up here and the things he could face if he does decide to run again. There's nothing on video really of him doing something to these women or whatever.
He hasn't been accused.
Right.
However,
there is video of Vop Osley ordering sheriff's deputies to yank this woman out of the room who says was sexually harassed for years by Thomas Cook. So I would expect that would show up in a campaign ad if I had to guess.
For sure.
If I was a Republican operative, I think that would be front and center.
When you were there that night, did you see that coming? This fight? Did you expect it to go when she went over her time? I mean, I've been at plenty of council meetings where people go over their time. Did you expect what we're seeing now on video? Did you think that was going to happen?
No, I knew something was happening. I knew she was going to be there. I knew she was going to try and get up and speak at one point. So I assumed there was going to be a clash of some kind, and not necessarily a physical clash, but there was going to be, someone was going to tell her to sit down or whatever it may be. But I never expected it to reach the level that it did. I was pretty shocked.
Did they again? I wasn't in this meeting, so I'm just asking. Did they ask her like, "Hey, you're done"? Like, were there warnings, and then, or did it just quickly like escalate?
It was so. In all fairness to her, President Osley did interrupt her a few times, and then once the timer rang, he goes, "Oh, Miss Roberts, you're done." And she's like, "No, I'm not done. I'm still speaking or whatever." And then he said, "Sheriff's deputies, get rid of anybody who is talking right now." And she was obviously the one talking, and so she and you met her fate right there.
Forcibly removed.
What time is that council meeting? This next, because she gets to speak now. When is that one?
That one, I believe, it is on Tuesday. I think probably it's 6 or 7. It's a committee meeting, so it's not a full. I don't know where it'll be held, and it's not like a full meeting of the council. I believe it's the finance committee or something like that, because they're talking about this payment. But Chairman Frank Mascari said during this whole blow up, he said, afterwards, Miss Roberts, you can come and speak at my committee meeting, because he's the chair and he's in charge there. And he said, you can speak for as long as you want. So there will be an opportunity for her to say her piece. She doesn't live here any longer, so I don't know if she will be there. I assume she will, but that's yet to be seen.
But that could be Tuesday.
That is Tuesday. Yes.
And that at what time?
The time I'm uncertain on. Normally they're 6, 7 o'clock,
right?
Generally, but
double check on that.
I can probably look it up here real quick,
because that's something we should carry.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
That will be at length and interesting, because like she's got her 49 pages of what she says happened, and she was expecting much more of this to be included in her in the report from the city, but it was not.
Right.
And therefore, here we are. What I think we all thought last week was, okay, Jenny, when you were at the thing, okay.
It's at 5:30.
5:30.
5:30 in the public assembly room. So it is going to be in the main.
It's going to be in the main one.
The main council chambers.
Okay. That'll be interesting on Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, we will see if we can't carry that here on Fox
Yeah.
59 now. And so with that,
I'm
but Jenny,
sorry. It says Monday.
Monday.
We might need to figure that
I
out.
might need to. I know.
Might need
I
to.
was told Tuesday, but I'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
It'll be on the website or something
We'll
like
figure
that.
it out.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, we'd like to carry that. So with that said, Jenny, I think most of us thought that this thing would be over when you were there that night. Like,
Oh yeah.
all right, but they're
Here's
clear.
the report. Here's what it is. Legally compliant. I thought that was going to be before I knew what the report was. I thought going into this, okay, this is going to be 6 months of investigating. We're going to get the report. That's going to be the end of it. I never saw any of this coming.
But isn't it sort of like, I sort of thought this when they first did this investigative committee, is that this never is just it.
Oh, it
Mhm.
never is.
Because
I
if
don't
you
even know why I
remember,
thought it'd
like,
be over.
well, the thing I always think back to special counsel for Bill Clinton,
Mhm.
Ken Starr, who was
Mm-hmm.
investigating Bill Clinton, and I believe he was focused on the Whitewater investigation, which was a whole real estate thing, whatever. As part of that, because when you give somebody sort of authority to investigate you,
Right.
it's never really going to, you know, it may not work out very well for you.
Right.
And in that case, they uncovered, the Monica Lewinsky thing,
Mm-hmm.
which turned
Turned into what it
could be one
was.
of the biggest scandals in American politics. So I always thought, if you're gonna unleash an investigative committee onto anybody or someone, it's never going to stop with just
Right.
whatever it was originally intended for. I always think it's always going to be a little bit
The roots go
bigger
a
than
little
that.
bit
Yes,
deeper.
and like if
Yeah.
they thought that the report, was just gonna, satisfy everybody, then they were dead wrong
Oh yeah.
because it never will.
And never will.
So what happens next? So we got this council meeting at some point this week,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll hear from Lauren Roberts, and
Presumably.
then we'll see.
And then we'll see. I mean, the mayor did his round of interviews with all the TV stations and the newspapers, publications, whatever. So, um, I think it was probably a good move on them because the longer it looks like you're hiding,
Right.
the longer the story goes on.
Mhm.
But I still think there will be things to come because there's going to be continued questions about the law firm and the report and everything like that. So
I
that's
think
what's next.
I think we're not quite done here. I
I
think we
can't
could see
imagine. Yeah,
maybe some more things coming up
right.
out of
And if
this.
more people call for resignations, I mean, that sort of that
It keeps the
developed over
story
the week.
going.
Mhm.
Yep, Josh Bain, who you see there, was the latest Republican, only Republican.
Mm-hmm.
So if more people come forward and um, say that, and it might be, and that might happen depending on what people find out as they continue to
Mm-hmm.
question the law firm about this report. People might find something that they really find objectionable, and they're like, you know what, okay, it's time. Because I've heard that there are some counselors who are sort of fence sitters a little
Mhm.
bit and are weighing
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Well, now for the first time, I have an actual understanding. I feel like having interviewed Russ McQuaid, spending this time talking to you guys, talking with some Democrats to figure out where everybody's coming from and what's what. I feel like I now have a clear understanding, and I think it's simply that there's still this ongoing investigation. Joe Hogsett has sent some uncomfortable texts, but at this time, that's all it is.
Right.
So I asked when I had Greg Merriweather and Sam in here, I'm like, any one of these things don't add up to on the Joe Hogsett's part. Don't add. You send some uncomfortable texts. That's not resignable, fireable,
Right.
even
Correct.
But I was like, is it any one thing? Like, no, it's the combination of all of these things to
Mhm.
where we feel this way that it's time for him to go.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
we shall see what happens
We
next.
shall.
Before we go, and Max, we've got to have you in here for a little Max time at some point.
Oh, yes, I've been hearing about these.
Get to know
Yes, yes,
Maxwell Lewis.
yes. We got to do a get to know Maxwell Lewis. And so I asked this question to everybody, and I asked this question to Jenny, and everybody said, "It's a good question." Especially with all this, the stuff that we're talking about.
Okay.
Is Max Lewis, when you think about covering a story,
Mhm.
what is most important to you? Being accurate
Ooh.
or being fair? No, let me. That's not how I asked. Being accurate or telling both sides?
Oh. Um,
We had an interesting sidebar convo to this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you answer before we talk
I
about
would
that.
say being accurate, because I think this is a bigger problem. Wider is, you try to play the both sides game,
Mm-hmm.
but both sides are. It's not always that both sides are equal
That's
in
what
their.
that's what we said. It's like nobody. It's talking about cancer.
Yeah,
Nobody's gonna say cancer is good, so there are no
right,
two sides to that story. That
right.
was an example we gave.
And just even, sometimes, and this generally probably has to do with politics and political stories and
Mm-hmm.
controversial stories. But sometimes one side has more evidence or facts to back them up than the other one. And so, should I, in turn, give equal attention to both sides or points of view or whatever, even though one is clearly more, credible
Yeah.
than the other, or is telling the truth, and one is not.
Mhm.
Because I think you could make an argument that it's irresponsible to put lies on
Blatant lies.
on yeah, in your story. So
Because
I
we've
think
had it
being accurate,
before where we've said where we fact checked, and that's the whole
right,
point of fact checking. Where if somebody does do say a lie, we have the receipts
right,
to back it up. This is not true. So if we did have to technically do both sides, fact check
right,
and make sure it's accurate, and say,
And
that's not how
even
that went.
and my thought on those is it's dangerous because people say, "Well, I heard it on TV." They don't always
Mm-hmm.
remember the whole context of which they
right,
heard it.
Right.
Well, I
right,
heard it in Max's story,
Mm-hmm.
right,
but you were saying actually this is a lie.
right,
And I bring this up because once upon a time I had an executive producer uh, tell us how we needed to make sure that basically he was saying we need to try to please everybody by letting this be a public forum. And we have seen and that was pre-COVID, and so we've seen so much change since then.
right,
But TV isn't just, and the news isn't just supposed to be this public forum of what people think. At the end of the day, it is still supposed to be
right.
accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you can't please everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be
Yeah.
able to. Some people like to just live in their own reality,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't care what the facts are and whatever. I think it goes back to, a good example is the 2020 election, and
Mm-hmm.
whether it
Mm-hmm.
was stolen, whether there was massive
Mm-hmm.
fraud. They went into court everywhere across the country. There was never, they were never, all cases were dismissed. They were never able to, there was no proof. There was
Mm-hmm.
no anything. And, so I think giving the both sides argument is, the both sides argument costs Fox News, $600
Mm-hmm.
billion or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
You
That's a
can't,
good point.
Mm-hmm.
well, it may not be that much. I think I'm
Well, it was
exaggerating.
a lot of money.
It was
It
a
was a
lot of
lot of
it was a
money.
lot of money.
600 billion's a lot. I think, but it was something. It was like 600 million,
It
maybe.
was a
Maybe it
chunk.
was 600 million.
Chunk of change.
Regardless, you don't give, clearly there was one side to that. And yeah.
All right, that's a little tease of inside the brain
Uh-oh.
of Max Lewis, who I hold you in high regard because you
Oh,
get
well, thank you.
into things that I don't want to touch. Like I don't want to go through court documents and all these different things. Not that I don't want to. It's like it's so much.
It's
But
Oh, I love
daunting.
it.
I know you do because
Yeah.
we'll get an email in the morning 4 a.m. because Max is
Max
checking
is
on
going through
jail
court.
records.
Yeah, Max is going through court documents for funsies.
Yeah,
I try to keep up.
yes, you do, and you do it well.
Thank you.
We'll talk more with Max. You can watch him weekends at 11 and 6 on CBS4, and Jenny 10 o'clock on the weekends on Fox 59. We'll be back with more of Fox 59 tonight every night at 8 o'clock right here on Fox 59 Now. I'm Cameron Riddle. I'll also talk to you on the radio Sunday mornings on my radio show Open Lines on 106.7 WTLC. Until then, have a great night.